All right, so today we're going to really dig into Winston Churchill.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, so we're talking soldier, writer, painter, politician.
And a legend, right?
And a legend.
It can't,
It's true.
you can't deny it.
Yeah, and to get into all that, we've got some excerpts from his Wikipedia page.
Okay.
Focusing on his early years
Yeah.
and journey through British politics, which
Which
was
is
a
like
wild ride, let me tell you.
It's fascinating how often we just think of him as like that wartime leader,
Right.
but his path to that point was
Yeah.
not a straight shot at all.
Not even close.
Setbacks, controversies.
Yeah.
He even had like a period called the Wilderness Years,
Oh, really?
where like his political career seemed
Yes.
totally bleak.
Wow. That sounds very...
It sounds almost Shakespearean.
It does. What happened during that time?
So this was about a decade.
Okay.
From the mid-20s to the mid-30s.
Okay.
And Churchill just found himself kind of more and more on the outs of the Conservative Party.
Really?
He was really critical of Indian self-rule.
Okay.
And then he was a big supporter of Edward VIII during the whole abdication crisis.
No, right.
And that really alienated him from a lot of people.
Okay.
He was seen as a liability.
Huh. So this was a man who knew failure, who
Yeah.
knew what it meant to be, like, out of favor.
For sure.
It really makes you wonder how that kind of experience shapes a person.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
I mean, this period forced him to kind of like look inward,
Okay.
refine his ideas, and ultimately it just fueled his fire
To come back.
to come back to power. Yeah.
Yeah.
Real testament to his resilience.
So let's rewind even further back to his early life.
Okay.
I mean, born into aristocracy, son of a prominent politician.
Right.
You'd think he was just, like, destined for a smooth ride to the top.
Yeah, you think it'd be easy street,
Right.
but not so much.
What happened?
I mean, while his lineage definitely opened doors, his relationship with his parents was really strained.
Oh, wow.
And he was a restless kid,
Yeah.
rebellious even.
Yeah. Really?
He just craved action-adventure. In fact, he actually served in the military.
Oh, wow.
Cuba,
Yeah.
India,
Wow.
Sudan.
And he was like,
While he was doing all this,
yeah.
sending war reports back to London newspapers.
So he was a war correspondent?
Yeah, basically.
Before he was even a politician?
Exactly.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That early taste of action.
Yeah.
I wonder if that explains his later embrace of military solutions.
I think it definitely speaks to that desire
Yeah.
to be in the middle of it all, shaping things,
Right.
not just watching from the sidelines.
Wow. And that really carried over into his political life, too.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, he became a member of parliament at 25.
That's young.
Yeah, super young.
Yeah.
But then there's this curious detail that he switched political parties.
Oh, yeah,
Not once, but twice.
that's right.
What was that all about?
Well, at that time, British politics was going through like a major transformation.
Yeah.
The Liberal Party, which had been the dominant force, was facing all these challenges from the rising Labour Party and kind of a resurgence in the Conservative Party.
So do you think Churchill's shifts were...
I think it was a mix
Yeah,
of his own political beliefs evolving,
right.
especially his like commitment to free trade.
Okay.
But also, I think he was a pretty shrewd politician.
Yeah.
And he understood how the power was shifting.
So it wasn't just like flip-flopping just for ambition's sake.
No, I don't think so.
There was a method to his madness.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
You know, and don't forget, he held a lot of important jobs during this period.
Right.
President of the Board of Trade, Home Secretary.
Right.
First Lord of the Admiralty twice.
Wow.
So each one of these roles gave him really valuable experience
Yeah.
in how the government actually works.
It's almost like he was preparing for something bigger.
It's like he was deliberately immersing himself in all these different parts of the government.
Right. And it's important to remember that each of those roles came with its own challenges.
Oh, absolutely.
And he had to, like, demonstrate leadership,
For sure.
decision-making.
Yeah, he had to make tough calls.
Yeah, like, what kind of tough calls did he have to make?
Well, for example, when he was Home Secretary,
Okay.
there were those 1910 Tony Pandy riots.
Oh, right.
You remember those?
Yeah, a major industrial dispute with the coal miners in Wales.
Exactly. And he decided to send in troops to keep order,
Wow.
which is still controversial
Yeah.
to this day.
Right.
It shows you the kind of pressure he was under,
Right.
the tough choices.
The scrutiny.
Yeah, being in that kind of high office.
Yeah. It seems like he was constantly tested,
Yeah,
like forced to adapt and evolve.
for sure.
And I'm sure that, this ability to navigate rough waters
Yeah.
really became crucial later on
Oh, yeah.
when he faced his biggest challenge, leading Britain through World War II.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's where it all comes together. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really something how those pre-war experiences, those wilderness years,
Right.
really shaped his leadership.
During the war.
Yeah, during World War II.
Yeah.
It's like all those trials just forged within him this resilience,
Yeah.
like this deep understanding of just how fragile, but also how tenacious power can be.
Right. So it's 1940, Britain is standing alone against Nazi Germany,
Yeah.
and Churchill becomes prime minister.
Yeah, what a moment.
It's almost like...
So much dramatic irony.
Right.
The man that everyone thought was a liability.
Totally.
Now he's the one they're turning to.
To guide them through their darkest hour.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
The guy, he did. His speeches from this period.
Iconic.
Legendary for a reason.
They really are.
They weren't just eloquent. It was like a battle cry.
Yeah.
Infused with this raw understanding of what was at stake.
Right. You're thinking of those lines like blood, toil, tears, and sweat.
Oh, yeah.
Or we shall fight on the beaches.
Gives me chills just thinking about it.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
But beyond the rhetoric, what specific decisions or strategies really stand out?
Well, one that comes to mind is the evacuation of Dunkirk.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, can you imagine the pressure he was under?
Right.
Over 300,000 Allied troops trapped on those beaches in France.
Right.
Facing capture or annihilation.
It's incredible.
He rallied the entire nation.
Yeah.
Mobilized this crazy flotilla of everything.
Civilian ships.
Yeah, civilian ships, naval ships.
And anything that could float.
To rescue those soldiers.
Wow, what a gamble.
It was a huge gamble.
But it paid off.
It shows his willingness to take risks.
Calculated risk.
Yeah, exactly. Calculated risk.
But it wasn't just about the military tactics, right?
Not at all.
There was more to it.
Yeah, he understood how important morale was.
To the war effort.
Keeping the fighting spirit alive in the nation.
Right.
Those speeches broadcast over the radio, they were a lifeline for people.
A source of strength.
Yeah, strength and defiance.
Yeah. And his role in forging alliances.
Yeah, can't forget that.
Like with President Roosevelt.
Huge.
That relationship, while I'm sure it had its tensions,
Oh, for sure.
was essential for getting aid to Britain.
Absolutely. Things like the Lend-Lease program.
Right. It's interesting that Churchill, for someone so deeply British, with that sense of exceptionalism,
Right.
that he recognized that they needed to collaborate.
Yeah, he knew they couldn't do it alone.
To defeat this common enemy.
It was a united front.
Right. And even with his allies, it wasn't always smooth sailing.
Definitely not. I mean, his relationship with Stalin.
Oh, yeah.
So much tension there.
Ideological clashes.
Totally.
Wow.
Churchill saw Stalin as a ruthless dictator.
But he knew they had to work together.
They had to defeat Hitler.
It was a marriage of convenience.
Yeah, you could say that.
Wow.
It was born of necessity.
Right. But that pragmatism also led to some pretty controversial decisions.
It did.
You're talking about the area bombing campaign?
Yeah.
The bombing of Dresden?
Yeah. I mean, they argue that these attacks were necessary to cripple German industry and morale.
Of course.
But the devastation to civilians, especially in Dresden,
Right.
it's a dark mark on his record.
It's a reminder that even the most revered figures
Yeah.
can make decisions that, looking back, seem very morally questionable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. And that complexity isn't limited to just the war.
No.
You know, his views on race and imperialism.
Yeah, a lot of that comes out in his writing and speeches.
Right.
And it really reflects the attitudes of his time.
Which are obviously very problematic to us now.
Very much so.
It's almost like he embodies both the best and the worst of his time.
Yeah, it's true.
Like champion of liberty and democracy.
Right.
But also someone who had this colonial worldview.
Yeah.
That just seems so wrong to us now.
It's that challenge with historical figures, isn't it?
Yeah.
We can't just erase their flaws.
Or pretend they didn't exist.
Exactly. It's about understanding them within their historical context.
Right.
And acknowledging how those actions and ideas still affect us today.
Okay, so the war ends. Victory is declared.
Right.
You'd think Churchill, the man who led them through the darkness,
The hero.
would be hailed as a conquering hero.
You'd think so, right? But then
Plot twist.
he loses the 1945 election.
I know. Can you believe it?
What happened?
It's a good reminder that even after these huge national triumphs,
Right.
things can change so quickly in politics.
Of course.
People wanted something different.
What do they want?
Well, after years of wartime austerity,
Right.
the British people were ready for a leader who was focused on rebuilding social reform.
Right.
And Churchill, for all his brilliance during the war,
Right.
he wasn't seen as the guy for that job.
I know. It's like that saying, you don't change horses midstream.
Exactly.
But once you're safely on the other side.
Yeah, then you might want a different horse.
a different ride.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, but Churchill wasn't one to just fade away.
No, not at all.
What did he do?
He became the leader of the opposition,
Okay.
continued to be a vocal critic of the Labor government's policies.
Really?
Yeah, and he was still a huge advocate for standing up to the Soviets.
Right, and that's when we get that famous Iron Curtain speech.
Oh, yeah.
1946, Westminster College in Missouri.
Shilling stuff.
The one where he warns about the Iron Curtain descending across Europe.
Yes, dividing East from West.
It really was a pivotal moment in the early Cold War.
Absolutely. It framed that whole ideological conflict
Right.
that would dominate global politics for decades.
It's so interesting how, even though he wasn't prime minister anymore,
Yeah,
Churchill's words still carried so much weight
I did.
on a global stage.
He was a statesman.
He really was.
Yeah.
It's almost like he went from national leader to this global figurehead
A voice of warning and wisdom.
in this new, uncertain world.
Yeah,
Wow, and this period also let him kind of reconnect with his other passions.
it did.
Like what?
Well, he won the Nobel Prize in Literature in '53.
For his wartime speeches. Actually, no.
Oh, really?
It was for his writing, historical and biographical works.
Oh, wow.
And he also kept painting.
Really?
Yeah.
Showing this whole other side to him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally different from that stern wartime leader image.
Wow. A man of many talents.
Many layers.
So many layers.
Sure.
But that call to politics that need to serve
It never really went away.
never went away.
And in 51, he was back.
Wow. Back to 10 Downing Street.
Back as prime minister.
A testament to his popularity and determination.
Absolutely.
But this second term came with new challenges.
It did, like
Yeah.
navigating the Cold War,
Right.
managing the decline of the British Empire,
Okay.
all those colonial conflicts.
Right.
And of course, he oversaw the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II in 53.
Wow.
Kind of a symbolic moment.
The passing of the torch.
Yeah, to a new generation.
I love that he was there for that.
It's pretty poetic.
It is a
Mm.
bridge between the old world and the new.
He saw it all.
But even Churchill couldn't defy time forever.
No one can.
So what happened?
His health started declining,
Yeah.
and he had to step down as prime minister in 55.
Okay.
But he stayed on as an MP until 64.
Wow.
Those final years were a mix of quiet reflection,
Yeah.
still engaging with world affairs,
Right.
and of course writing his memoirs.
What an undertaking.
Oh, massive, mate.
Mm.
A reflection on a life that spanned almost a century of history.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So we've seen the soldier, the writer, the politician, the wartime leader, the global statesman.
Yeah.
But what about just the man,
Yeah.
Churchill, the person? What
Yeah.
can we learn about his personality?
You know, his love of painting,
Yeah.
his struggles with what he called his black dog of depression.
Right?
It gives you a glimpse into who he really was.
Right.
He was strong and determined,
Yeah.
but also vulnerable to those bouts of sadness.
It really humanizes him.
It does.
It reminds us that these huge figures,
Yeah.
they're still human.
They are. And I think that's crucial to understanding his legacy.
How so?
We have to acknowledge the full spectrum of his personality.
The good and the bad.
Yeah, his achievements and his flaws,
Right.
his triumphs and his tragedies.
You can't just see him as this bronze statue
Exactly.
on a pedestal.
He was flesh and blood
A real person who lived through some of the most turbulent times in history.
and navigated them in ways that we still find fascinating and inspiring today.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm ready for part 3.
All right, let's wrap this up.
Okay, so we've really gone through it all, huh?
We have his rise to power his wartime leadership,
Right.
that complex personality, and of course, those controversial viewpoints.
Right. So let's talk about his lasting impact.
Okay.
Churchill's legacy. How do we grapple with that in the 21st century?
Yeah, that's a big one. It's a legacy that is multifaceted and, frankly, still hotly debated today.
Yeah, I can see that.
When he died in 65, at the age of 90, it was a moment of national mourning in Britain.
Really?
Oh, yeah, it really showed just how deeply he'd impacted Britain's identity. They
Right.
gave him a state funeral. It's a rare honor, and it drew huge crowds, just a sea of faces saying goodbye.
To the man who had really embodied their nation's resilience.
Exactly.
It's fascinating how certain figures become more than just political leaders.
Yeah.
They almost become mythic symbols.
It's true, and Churchill, with those wartime speeches, his defiance against tyranny, that British bulldog image,
Right.
he fit that mold perfectly.
Yeah, and his image is everywhere.
It is statue stamps coins.
Yeah.
You constantly see him, a visual reminder of his place in history.
But is that image, that symbol, the whole story?
Well, that's the tough question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially when we consider those viewpoints on race and imperialism.
Right, which we would consider very problematic.
Oh, yeah, we can't just sweep those under the rug. We have to acknowledge them.
So how do we reconcile those contradictions?
Yeah.
I mean, do we judge him solely by the standards of his time, or do we hold him accountable to our own evolving morals?
There's no easy answer.
Yeah.
It really requires a nuanced perspective.
Yeah.
Recognizing both the good and the bad of his legacy.
Right. I mean, we can admire his courage, his way with words, his strategic thinking.
Absolutely. Those things transcend time and context.
But his flaws, his blind spots,
Yeah, they serve as cautionary tales.
reminding us that even the brightest minds can still be susceptible to prejudice.
The narrow-mindedness to getting things wrong.
Yeah, right. So how do we learn from the past without just blindly celebrating it?
Exactly. And I think Churchill's life offers a lot of lessons.
Okay, like what?
His ability to bounce back from failure, his mastery of language, his strategic thinking. I mean, these are qualities that are still relevant today.
And his flaws help us learn too.
They do. They remind us that leadership, it's a human thing.
Right.
It's complex. It's full of contradictions.
And it's in those contradictions, those imperfections,
That we often find the most valuable lessons.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah,
it's clear that Churchill's legacy isn't some simple story.
not at all.
It's messy, it's challenging, and ultimately it's up to each of us to grapple with it.
He wasn't a saint. He wasn't a monster. He was a man of his time, but he also shaped his time in really profound ways.
He did.
And as we move further into the 21st century, his life and work, they continue to spark debate, inspire reflection, and just remind us of the power and the potential pitfalls of leadership.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the life and legacy of Winston Churchill.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you learned something. Maybe it sparked your curiosity and encouraged you to keep exploring history and all its complexities.
Yeah, because that's where the real insights are.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep those brain gears turning.